quick introduction of myself. I spent 30 years with NASA and in the area of education the entire time. Had some marvelous experiences from early childhood all the way to graduate school, working with teachers, working with students, working with science centers, planetariums, museums. But that was not where I began. I actually began in the classroom at the elementary level and then the middle level before I made the jump over to NASA. And while I retired from NASA in 2017, I did not retire from education. So in this new chapter of my life, I relocated from Washington, D.C. to Columbia, South Carolina. And for probably half a year, I searched to see where could I make the best use of my skill set, plus my interest to serve in education. It led me to Georgia and to South Carolina First Steps. And Georgia has an amazing team that she works with across the state. She is perfect for us today as we look at the whole area about early childhood. So let me just turn this over to you, Georgia.
Let me just begin by saying thanks to each of you, to the parents who are participating on this call. We know that you are lifting a heavy load right now, and it is such a pleasure to come alongside each of you and hopefully offer just a few words of support and encouragement. And to the teachers and caregivers, thank you for your continued love and support and commitment to both the children who are yours as well, and also to the families who you love and support. My role at South Carolina First Steps is to serve as the executive director, and in that capacity, I have the opportunity to provide support to over 30,000 children, birth through 5, all across the state of South Carolina. The services we provide range from 4-year-old kindergarten programs to home visiting, where a parent educator goes into the home, the family is gracious to welcome that educator into their lives. And we offer support in all different formats. And nowadays, that format includes a virtual format. So we'll talk to you a little bit about that in just a minute. The title of our presentation today is Celebrating You, Celebrating Parents as a Child's First. And there we are. So now you can see my family, and you see Dr. Canright there teaching at a day camp. I think you're going to walk us through the plan for today.
Thank you. Yeah, you'll see here there's several things we want to cover with you. We're going to share some insights and examples on the first 2 bullets, the early years and working together at a distance. And I'll tell you what, Georgia and her team have had a lot of experience with that. So she'll talk about that. We'll have an opportunity to do some Q&A after that. And then we will transition into a video, which is called The 5 Basics. After we've done that, we're going to bring all this home, literally bring it home. We're going to look at an activity that can easily be done at home with your toddler and even the whole family. We will offer some additional resources, and then we're going to do a last Q&A. So that's kind of the session outline with you today. Let's go to the next slide.
What we really want to share with you is the importance of this period of time in your child's life. And we are in a moment where we all are talking about the new normal. You've heard people say the expression, my life feels like it's on pause. Well, I want to reassure you that your child's brain development is not on pause. This is a moment where your child, that infant that you hold with that skin to skin, just learning what it feels like to be able to walk on his own 2 feet, that 2-year-old who is repeating back rhymes and songs back to you, all of that is a child's brain developing. And during that first 3 years of life, literally 80% of your child's brain grows. 80% of that brain growth happens during those first 3 years. So what that makes you, parents, caregivers, and certainly teachers as well, who are in this incredibly important work, it makes you brain developers. So while we talk about the important work, Dr. Canright, I'm sure you talk about the important work of the rocket scientists. Well, you all are brain developers. I can't think of a more important role than being a brain developer. You are building the future. You are building the people of the future. So let's not take this as a moment of pause. Let's not say, oh gosh, my child is missing out. Let's really take this moment to lean in, albeit differently, to continue that work of early childhood development, both from home as parents and caregivers, and also virtually as teachers and educators take their work to a very different platform. So you can advance to the next slide, because I want to share a little bit more about what that looks like and what some of the benefits as well as the challenges are. So we're all needing to learn now to work together at a distance. And for many of us, myself included, I mentioned that I'm also a mother. The experience that we have is one where we entrust our children, we entrust our little ones to teachers, to caregivers in our community who have been appointed, who've been elevated to this critical role of being our child's educator, being our child's first teacher. But the reality is, each of us as parents first and best teacher. So as we migrate to an online or virtual platform, doing so with young children creates some new challenges. Many of you may also have older children in your homes, and so you may be receiving virtual or e-learning or distance learning packets from your local public school. And that might work for a fourth grader, but it doesn't work nearly as well for a 2-year-old. A 2-year-old teacher cannot just upload a video content and expect a 2-year-old to be plopped down in front of a screen to watch it. And in fact, doing so would be detrimental. We know from much research that the interaction between a parent or a caring adult, a parent, a caregiver, a grandparent, a cousin, whoever that adult is in your child's life, that human interaction is priceless, that it actually builds the brains, as I was mentioning just a moment ago. And so part of what we're encouraging at South Carolina First is what we're encouraging our teachers to do is to really look at virtual learning as an opportunity to interact with parents, not as much to interact directly with the children. It's great for those young children to see your faces and recognize you and hear your voice. Maybe sing a song to them over a Zoom call like this or over the telephone. But by and large, your virtual interactions are going to primarily be with the parents. And this is a moment, this is a time where you as teachers and caregivers can really equip parents. So we at South Carolina First Steps are sharing regular tidbits of information, videos, we're texting our families, we're offering a listening ear at a time of great stress. That can, for many families, be so difficult as our jobs come to a halt, struggling. So be there as a support for families. That's the most important message that I can give to you who are teachers. To our families, I want to encourage you to continue to share your lives, to continue to graciously open your doors to the teachers who are in your lives. They miss your children. They love your children. And having that continued connection between you, your family, and your child with that teacher will make the transition back once this is all over so much easier. So I'm going to transition to the next slide, which I think is an opportunity to open it up to you for questions. I believe we're using the chat box. So I don't know if there are any questions at this point.
Watch you as you talk about the family. You have a staff that's not just here in Columbia, you serve across the whole state. So there's juggling of staff across the state. In addition to that, you have 8 state agencies that you also interface with. So under this COVID-19 and everything that's happening, what in the world has been your, your greatest challenge and maybe even your most unexpected blessing?
Thank you so much thanks for asking. I think that this is a time where we've all realized that childcare providers are a critical part of not only a child's life, but of the entire workforce, of the economy, and also of a whole family's life. And so I think in some ways it's been a blessing, because for all of the childcare teachers out there who go to work every day, do it for mission-driven reasons, but frankly don't get the respect or the honored place of elevation that they deserve. I think this is a moment where all over the country, people are realizing our childcare staff members are part of the essential workforce. We can't reopen our economies without childcare. Parents can't go back to work without childcare. And I appreciate that right now is the moment to really lean in and advocate for the elevated role of education. So it's been a challenge as we've learned to navigate this, but also a great opportunity. Thank you, Shelley. And
I have another question. I see there's nothing that's coming in the chat room. Our audience is principally early Head Start, and South Carolina First Step has a relationship with Early Head Start in the state. Can you kind of talk about how you are married together, or what you do differently?
Absolutely. So in every state, there is a different sort of early childhood landscape. And for the parents who are listening, I encourage you, you have young children right now. They are going to be part of a complex system for many years. It's an early childhood system at this point, but later it will be a K through 12 system. So I encourage you to really begin mapping out what's out there to support you and your family. And part of what we do at South Carolina First Steps is we help families understand the landscape of what's out there to help them. So one critical component is Early Head Start. Early Head Start, as all of you families know, is a whole family program. It's not just a child care. It also includes nutrition and dental services when your children get a little bit older and start needing dental screenings, hearing and vision, support to you as families. It's economic and job training support. So it's very holistic, but it's not everything. And part of what First Steps does here in South Carolina is we come alongside families who may need additional support, such as additional home visiting or parenting group meetings, or when their children turn 4, we have many warm handoffs where Early Head Start families that may not qualify for Head Start because their incomes have increased to the point that they no longer qualify can continue to receive high quality 4-year-old kindergarten publicly funded by the state through First Steps. So in your own community there in Texas, know that you have a network of organizations, publicly funded, state funded, federally funded, that all come together because collectively we want you and your children to be successful. And that's what we do at First Steps. So I think we can move on to the next slide now, just to keep things rolling. So we're actually going to make a bridge into a part of this presentation that's a little bit more hands-on. So if we can go to the next slide, what you're going to see is an outline, or maybe it makes the most sense. Having trouble advancing slides. Okay. What you see here is an outline of a very simple and powerful way to remember what you as caregivers and families can do to build those brains. This is a kind of way of thinking about this called the 5 basics. The basics are simple, they're fun, and they're just very powerful. And so Dr. Canright is going to share a video for you. This is available in both Spanish and English. And there are many resources on the Basics website. So feel free to look at that. We'll cue it over to you, Shelley, so that you can play this video.
Tu hijo comienza a aprender desde el instante en el que nace.
Agua.
Cada niño posee un enorme potencial para triunfar en la vida.
Es una pera.
Estos 3 primeros años pueden tener el mayor impacto en el aprendizaje de tu hijo.
Wow, awesome job.
Lo más importante es darles un comienzo adecuado. En eso consiste el ser padres.
Una nariz, una boca. Dar todo ese amor y el cariño que uno puede tener con palabras, con afectos, con dedicación.
El amor es todo. Y cuando un niño tú ves que tú le brindas amor, ellos dicen, si yo tengo amor, pues lo tengo todo.
Cualquier padre, cualquiera sea su historia, puede jugar un papel positivo en la vida de su hijo.
Uno.
Hay algunas actividades cotidianas que pueden hacer una gran diferencia. Por eso, los Basics colabora con los líderes de la investigación y de la comunidad para fomentar una nueva e importante iniciativa. Los Basics son 5 principios simples que deseamos que todos conozcan. El primero de los Basics es dale todo el amor, controla el estrés. El segundo es háblale, cántale y señálale las cosas.
¿Cómo se llama eso? Carro.
El tercero es cuenta, agrupa y compárale las cosas.
1, 2, 3.
El cuarto es exploren mediante el movimiento y el juego. El quinto es lean y comenten cuentos.
Ay, qué linda.
¡Bravo! ¡Aplausos!
Estas son 5 cosas sencillas y divertidas que cualquier familia puede hacer desde el nacimiento.
¡Ya!
Trabajemos todos juntos para que los niños puedan tener la mejor preparación posible y alcanzar su máximo potencial. Dale todo el amor, controla el estrés. Háblale, cántale y señálale las cosas. Cuenta, agrupa y compárale las cosas. Exploren mediante el movimiento y el juego. Lean y comenten cuentos.
So the basics, it offers 5 simple everyday activities that can make a big difference that you do with your toddler. And actually, to support that, we have created for you a handout. And now that I've got it running, I got to stop it. It's running on my computer. There we go. So we actually have a handout about the 5 basics that I will make use of when we do our simple activity. Following our presentation with you in a couple of days, you're going to get a take-home gift from us. That gift will be this handout. There'll be a handout on the activity that we're going to do, and even this slide deck. We'll make it a PDF so it can go out to everyone that is registered, so you can do a lot more with this and explore that sort of thing. So if we can go to the next slide. So engaging our kids in ways that involve connection, curiosity, and collaboration is a key both to play and in helping the brain to grow as well. The thrill of discovery and learning can come in so many different ways. So what I like to do now is take a lot of what we've heard. Unfortunately, you didn't see much in the video, but I want to bring it home, literally bring it home, an at-home activity. And 3 of these basics that are identified in the video and which you will get a handout on, I will try to incorporate, show you how it can be simply incorporated into this activity. Talk and point, explore through play, and read and discuss. So let's take a look at the next slide. We're gonna make Oobleck. Oobleck, what in the world is Oobleck? Well, Oobleck was introduced to the world through Dr. Seuss. Back in the late 1940s, early 1950s, he wrote a book that was called Bartholomew and the Oobleck. And in that book, he has his magicians, to create a new weather. He's tired of the rain and the snow and the sunshine and the fog. And so they go away, they throw ingredients into a magic pot, and voila, this green glob begins to impact the kingdom. So we're going to make Oobleck. But the question you might have is, what is Oobleck exactly? You can see here, Oobleck that we're going to make is made up of cornstarch and water. That's it. And if you want to put some color to it, like maybe make it green like it is in the Dr. Seuss book, put a few drops of food coloring of your choice into the mixture. But what is really neat about Oobleck is how it behaves. It's not a solid, nor is it a liquid, but sometimes it acts as a solid and sometimes it acts as a liquid. Now, to make Oobleck, really easy. You can see here you're going to take 1.5 to 2 cups of cornstarch. Have your child help to measure that out, and I would start with 1.5 cups. Measure that out and have it dumped into the bowl. Then you have the water, and before the water is put into the cornstarch, ask the question to your child. So what do you think is going to happen when we put water into the cornstarch? This is a great time as you begin to make this, that you have a lot of talking to your child, see what their answers are, try to elaborate more, explore further what they are saying about the process. And like I said, if you want to make it colored, then this is a time before you put the water into the Oobleck that you actually will put some drops of food coloring into the water. Again, as that begins to happen, you know what happens as it hits the water and it begins to wave through down to the bottom. Another opportunity to ask a lot of questions as to what's going on. Now step two is you begin to mix this up. And your child can certainly help in mixing this up. I'm going to tell you though, it's going to be like a real thick batter. So in order to get the consistency that you need, you may need to help your child in mixing it. And you might find, this is too wet. Maybe I need to put a little bit more cornstarch. Remember, the recipe says 1.5 to 2 cups of cornstarch. I tend to add cornstarch tablespoon by tablespoon. And if you think you need to add a little bit more water, then again, tablespoon by tablespoon. You can see number 3 there where they're actually mixing it with their hands. I tend to do it with a spoon, but again, let's get messy, get your child in there. You can see on number 4 how that looks. It is like stringy, like a liquid. Now, I'll tell you a secret for me anyways, is I tend to, after I've made the Oobleck, I might put it aside just to let it set a little bit, but your child may want to really get into it, and that is just fine. But here's a choice. This is the activities I'm sharing with you. You don't have to do it in a linear way as I'm presenting it. You might say, okay, let's mix up and talk about Oobleck. Let's put the pan aside, a bowl aside, and now let's go read the story about Oobleck. And then you could come back to this. So let me show you. Come on, and let's go away from the slides and let me show you my Oobleck. You see, you guys see that Oobleck here? All right, can you see that? All right, it looks like, almost like it's a solid because it will take the shape of whatever is holding it, but it's kind of moist. So now when you want your child to start playing with it, do so with questions. The first thing I would say is, okay, don't just put your hand in it. Tell the child to put their hand on top, on the surface. What does it feel like? Now ask them to push down like they're going to make a handprint. And as they do that, ask questions. Oh, is it smooth? Is it bumpy? Is it hot? Is it cool? And as they begin to then lift their hand up out of it, you're going to see a lot of things kind of falling off, like you see on number 4. This is an opportunity to tell them to cup their hand, like you see there on picture number 4. You can scoop some out, put it in their hand, and see if they can make a little ball out of it. And they should be able to make a ball. Ask them, did you make a ball? Really? Prove it to me. And as they open their hand up, it's going to flow again. Pretty awesome, this stuff. Lots of things to experiment with. And when they are doing that, you can then ask the question, well, it's a liquid, but can we do that with milk? Could you take milk and put it in the palm of your hand and roll it like you did this? Could you do that with water? This is a very mysterious mysterious substance. And with that, you could now move to the next slide because we've got some extensions you might do with the Oobleck. One idea that I didn't write down here, but let me just mention it, is so you have done the Oobleck, you have cleaned up. Now, how about doing an art activity? Here's where you might give your child crayon and paper and have them draw what they have just done. Draw about the experience. Not only do you then have a piece of art that you're talking with them about, but they now can share their experience, their piece of art with other people. So it's an opportunity to do more with vocabulary and interacting with others. The other thing that I'd mentioned before was about the book, Bartholomew and the Oobleck. Here's a picture of the cover of the book. Read and discuss stories is so important to the development of a child. The more we read with young children, the more prepared they become to enjoy reading and to do well in school. Stories expose children to new ideas and teaches them to use their imagination. For both parents and children, time together with books will form fond and lasting memories. With the book Dr. Seuss, you may be able to find that in the library. If not, they might be able to bring it into their collection. You might also go online to see, or go to a bookstore and see if they have the book if you'd like to purchase it. The other thing you can do is you could go online and they actually have some versions of Bartholomew the Oobleck online for read aloud. In the handout that you're going to get from us, where is that? We're going to give you a handout on all of this. You'll find that I offer 3 read aloud versions, and 14-minute one, a 7-minute, and then even a 4-minute. What I would say that if you're going to do a read aloud, do not just push play and let the story be told. This is about read and discuss. So it's important that you discuss the cover of the book and what does the child think this is? And if you've just done the Oobleck, oh my goodness, here's that green globby stuff. Then as the book is being read, pause the book. If you're doing a read aloud, pause it so you can ask questions about the pictures. What do they think is going to happen next? Wait a minute. Could we do that with our Oobleck? What did we find when we did Oobleck versus what's happening in the story? Lots of things to do here. Enjoy the pictures, read with expression, and always, 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 if you can, tie back what you're reading to what they have just experienced. Now, the last thing, I can't let you get away without doing something with NASA, right? So the last thing I'm going to share to you is an out-of-this-world field trip. NASA had a partnership with Nickelodeon. And if you know Nickelodeon, they love slime. So NASA and Nickelodeon partnered. The question was, what would happen if we took slime to space? There were a small number of children that got together with the Nickelodeon staff and they messed around just like your child's going to do with Oobleck, and they tested some different ideas or questions that they had. Then they packaged it up and the slime was taken to space. And there were a group of astronauts that then tried their hand at slime in space. What I would suggest here, and at the bottom there, you can actually see this 15-minute free field trip. This is family fun. This is a chance for you to bring the family together. Ask them about space. What do you think it's like living in a house in space on the International Space Station? How does space differ from Earth? You know, how do you think the slime is going to differ from what we just did here with Oobleck? And here you go. I actually pulled some pictures out of the video so you get a general idea of what you would see if you took this out of the world virtual field trip. You'll see just how far slime will travel in space when it's shot out of a giant syringe. And what happens when you pop a slime balloon in an environment where liquids are weightless? Will it float? Will it plop to the ground and make a huge mess? bring the whole family, dress for space, and find out. So here you go. Georgia and I really had a lot of fun putting this together, but we found out we had far too much that we could not put into the presentation. But at the same time, we thought there might be some resources here that the teachers might want to check in a little bit further. The parents might have some other things on here they'd like to check out further. And I'll just say, a few of the things on here that I loved was the reference here to play and learn with my child. And at the very bottom there is one from PBS where they give you 11 easy recipes for Play-Doh, yak, and slime. So you don't have to just stick with Oobleck, other things you can do as well. And let me now take this back to our Q&A session and turn this over to Raul, if he will advance a slide and let us know if there's any questions.
All right, let's check here the chat. And Darian said how fun, was actually gonna look into buying that book, but we can turn on YouTube in the meantime. Great.
Yes, great.
Cynthia is saying, thank you for sharing the Oobleck activity. I will try this with my grandchildren right away.
Great.
We have another question. Should a child be able to sit and play and pay attention if I enroll him in preschool at the age of 3?
Can I jump in and address some of this? So one of the things that I really love about even before age 3, and then I'll get to your question. The question is really at the heart of it. What does paying attention look like for a 3-year-old? Well, what does paying attention look like for a 1.5-year-old? Our parents have an early start, so you're anywhere from newborns, really prenatal. Some of you may be pregnant, so prenatal all the way up through age 3. And one of the things I know can be really challenging at this moment is we share these exciting, fun activities, and it looks perfect and beautiful and fun and icky, and you put it all together, and it doesn't go well, right? Your child doesn't pay attention. Your child doesn't, you say, put your hand gently down, and your child picks it up in the kitchen. So the thing I would encourage you on is when you take advantage of these wonderful ideas like the one shared with you today, or any ideas that are shared with you by your teachers or that you find on the internet, know that the most important thing, the single most important thing that's happening is not the learning that we have prescribed for you, but instead is your child looking at your face, putting his or her hand underneath your hand, stirring together, and feeling that connection with you. That is the most important. That is the richness of brain development between a loving adult and their child. So the element of paying attention, for some children, paying attention means sitting together with their parent and listening to a 7-minute book. For other children, it means taking that book, putting it in their mouth, pulling it out, tapping on the cover, and realizing that it's hard and it's not chewable. Depending on the age and developmental readiness of your child, both of those are a child actively engaging with a book. So should your child be ready as a 3-year-old to be enrolled in preschool? Absolutely. I will share as a mom, just in a real moment, there have been some big wins over the last 8 weeks for me. As my children have accomplished great things, and there have been some moments where I have felt like a terrible mom who just envies the ability and patience of my children's teachers. So we are all in this together, and frankly, I just want to say, you got this. I think we have another question.
One in general that it's about during the pandemic now. There's a lot of parents feeling insecure about having their kids going back to daycare, and rightly so. What do you recommend? What is it? what are the different daycare centers, child development centers doing to ease that anxiety of having their kids in somebody else's hand again, but you don't know where they were or if they were in contact with someone that tested positive?
I'm happy to take it.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, absolutely. This Q&A is for both you and I. This is really up your swim lane.
Okay, so I absolutely want to share with you that as a parent, you are going to know what's best for your child. Children have who is in the vulnerable population, a parent or a grandparent, and have exposure to other children may create a health challenge for the whole family. Some families have only one child and are craving that interaction with other children, and it would be safe for their family. So first and foremost, I want to say that there is no better expert for your child than you. And with that, I want you also to know that state governments and the federal government are giving great thought to how to ensure that childcares can remain open or reopen. So the CDC has put out a variety of guidelines to help childcare decide when is the right time to reopen. Or I know here in South Carolina, about half of our childcare centers throughout this pandemic and have stayed open even during the stay-at-home orders. And so one of the things that we see childcare centers doing is limiting the number of other children. It can happen where early in the morning classes are combined, where there's different children and different teachers, and then they go to their home class for much of the day, and in the afternoon children can be with other folks. So that's a lot of kids, right? That might be 30 kids instead of 8 kids. And so a lot of childcare centers are stopping that practice and just saying one teacher to his or her children that she supports. Definitely increased mask wearing among only the age 4, and the CDC guidelines indicate that that's only appropriate for children 2 or above, and that's very, very important because children who are younger than that are at risk of suffocation if they have a mask over their face. Very important to understand that. Hand washing, but ultimately each child care center and each state is putting out its own set of regulations to ensure that all children are healthy and safe even as they come back into a child care setting. And I think there might have been another question in the chat box. I think I saw.
Yes, there's more. What software can be useful for toddlers and twos? That came from Alice.
Shelley, I feel like you're the internet researcher. I'm going to turn this one to you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I might know a lot about the internet, but I couldn't play the video. I'm sorry, I don't know much about that young age with video. What I will say is that you want to have interactivity, and Georgia, you can certainly top this response, but never just let them have screen time without some adult interaction, so that there is a discussion, or not so much a discussion, but someone's alongside them to help respond as they show some enthusiasm or point something out. As to the specific software, that I can't say anything about, but Georgia, you might have some. I know that there's been some things through First Steps that maybe you've got some suggestions.
I'm sort of with you, Shelley. Honestly, we are encouraging our families not to use for their children who are under the age of 3. We are saying don't hand your child who's 1 or 2 years old. We acknowledge that there are times where children maybe may need to turn to their local PBS station to watch age-appropriate shows that will have lots of colors and music and interaction, and that's fine. As parents, sometimes that's necessary, but we really believe that that exploration, that human touch, or even that independent time for young children is really important. So I know I think we both didn't really answer your question. It would be amazing and magical. And I will say there are lots of software products out there that want to engage you and you and your young children. but we think that there's nothing that can replace that human interaction. There are a few other questions on here, and I wanted to answer one of them. There's a reason I got my phone. I wasn't being disrespectful. I wanted to share something with you. So the question that I see, it says, what signs should you see in your child to know what he or she should be able to do at the age of 3? And the CDC, I think we've all, if we didn't know about the CDC and their website before, we probably do now. So there's been lots of talk of the CDC as a resource during the COVID-19 pandemic. But the CDC also put out a really fantastic website and app, which is why I have it on my phone. And it's called the CDC Milestones Tracker. So if you Google CDC Milestones Tracker, and we can send out that link afterwards, you'll find an app where you can add multiple children. You can put their birth date, and for me, I'm looking at, I have my 4-year-old in here, and I can put in the birth dates, and it will give me reminders about what my child at that age should do. So I mentioned I have 3 children, so I have all 3 of my children in here, and it will give me that punch list, and I can answer questions. And so from those questions, I can find out, is my child on track? Sometimes the message it gives me is a message like, most children are able to jump by age 2. Try this again in 3 months and see if your child is jumping. And then by 2.5, if I answer, no, my child's not able to jump, then it will say, consult your pediatrician about this. At what point should I be concerned? It's one thing to be a little behind the average child, but at what point should I be concerned? And it will indicate that. It's also a great way to keep up with doctor's appointments and immunizations. So it's more than just a log of appropriate milestones. So I really recommend that one. And it's useful for children all the way from birth until they're in kindergarten. Are there other questions?
Yes. What other books do you recommend for our early Head Start parents to read to their children that will keep them engaged with a focus on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math?
I have connected with it. US First Books. Is that it? US First Books. You know who I'm talking about? Where we're doing donations.
Yes, Usborne Books. Sorry, I'm sorry. Your sound cut out a little bit. Yes, Usborne Books.
Yeah, and from that website, what I liked about that is they do break things down into categories and age appropriate. Again, maybe that's another site that we need to cite to share with this audience, because you can then go in there and you can see science and STEM and nature. So that's a rich resource that they have already vetted books and have found that they're very suitable for their different ages. And so that would be a source I would check out to see what other books for STEM for the young child.
And we can send that link.
Yes, and I encourage the audience to keep submitting questions on the chat. And if we are not able to get to all of them, we will have submit answers to you within a week, and we will submit the documents and the links to the videos so you can watch all those and have those resources. Another question here: if my child does not like to take a nap, what can I do? Is giving him warm milk really work?
So Shelley, you or me?
Oh, you go ahead. You've got the youngest and the most recent experience with that.
Well, unfortunately, I have had these challenges too. And, while I may pretend early childhood expert, when it comes to your own children, this can be a tough one. I think as parents, we all would love to just know that our children are going to take a 2-hour nap all afternoon, but that's not the reality for all children. So the most important thing for children as they're, getting rest is for the parents to ensure that they have a routine and consistency with that routine. And so, an early enough bedtime that that they're getting enough night sleep. It may be the case that your child stops taking naps earlier than other children. I have a 6-year-old who can still happily take a 2-hour nap in the afternoon if I can give her a peaceful enough place. There are other children who at 1.5 are done taking naps. And so all children develop differently. There's not a magical age where we know that, children will take naps until they're 4 years old. That's just not the reality. And so do provide that consistency of schedule. Give your child that consistent time where every afternoon or mid-morning, whenever that's the appropriate time within your child's early learning environment and also in your home, give them as much as possible a consistent time to rest, to lay in their crib if they're a very young child, or they're on a cot on the floor if they're a little bit older. Give them this. Some children, is really, really important. There are some children who can take a nap anywhere, who can, grab a blanket and lay down on the couch with the TV going and the dog barking, and they're fine. But for other children, the magic of taking a nap is getting the lights turned down, the music on, the caring adult patting them on the back, maybe feeling an adult breathing, keeping a very young child, patting them on your chest and then, laying them down, and doing so in a safe way. Never sleeping with your child, even though that can also, be an easy temptation for a tired parent. Never sleeping with your child, which is a safe sleep risk. The most important thing is that we set up those routines. We set up that environment and that time schedule that says to that little child's brain, it's rest time. For some children, it will be a nap, and for others, it will just be a quiet downtime.
Great. There's another one here, and it's going back to the Oobleck. Do you suggest reading the book before or after making and doing the Oobleck activity?
Yeah, good question. And it doesn't really matter. For me, I have tended to make the Oobleck, and I want to put it aside a little bit so it will set up. And then I go to the book. And so as I'm reading the book to them, we make reference back to what we just made and how was the Oobleck in the book made and what did we discover was happening in the book. And do you think that will happen when we go and play with our Oobleck? So you can do it that direction or the other way where you mess around with the Oobleck that you've made. You let your child do the art expression about it. And now let's go look at a book, look at the pictures in that book. Let's talk about what was, where did Oobleck come from, and discover the book. So again, it's either way. And some of this is dependent upon your child. As a child, they've made this, now they want to really dig into it, or would they be okay to say, well, let's put this aside now for about a half hour, whatever the time might be. And let's now read the book, and then you go back to it. So it just all depends. There's no one right way. You know your child.
Awesome, thank you. One more before we go to final comments. Bob Starr asks, what's the typical attention span for early childhood age ranges?
That's you.
I don't know the answer to that. It would be, I would love to know what the answer is. And I don't. I'm just gonna be honest. I don't know what the answer is. I'll give you some context to saying I don't know, just because I had a chuckle about it. So in South Carolina, the big state Department of Education came down with these guidelines recently. I just saw this, came down with these guidelines for school-age children, but it started as young as pre-K4, which I realize is older than your children. And the guidelines said the minimum amount of instruction in a whole day that our 4K kids should be getting, the minimum amount is 30 minutes, and the maximum amount is 60 minutes, is 1 hour. And the so, here we are as parents going, oh gosh, we need to get through and really make sure our kids are learning, and teachers are out there working so hard to send home lots of classwork to do, even for the 4K or kindergarten students. And what we all received from the powers that be at the State Department of Education was an acknowledgement that this is really hard. This is hard for parents. This is hard for children, that sustained attention on a project can be difficult. So I don't have a perfect answer. I don't know I don't know if there is a range. I'm sure that probably exists somewhere in research, sort of what averages are for a certain age. But, I think you've probably heard between Dr. Canright and I, you've heard us say it maybe a dozen or more times in this call that your child. Part of what we all do in our lives is we grow through challenges, right? So one of the practices that I appreciate that I see in our classrooms is the practice of seeing a child, meeting them where they are, and saying, this is a child who has an attention span of 2 minutes. Can I figure out a way to grow this child by having them have sustained attention for 3 minutes? And when that child gets to 3 minutes and doesn't get up and crawl away in the middle of the story time, but instead stays on my lap and listens to the whole 3-minute story, we celebrate that. We look at that child, we clap, we stroke that child's face, we give that child all of the neurological rewards of, you did a great job, right? And so that, just celebrating growth in your children during this very difficult time, that's one of the most important things you can be doing. So the only thing I want to say is that you as parents, you are doing a magnificent job. You have committed to your children's success. You have shown that commitment by enrolling them in Early Head Start. Early Head Start is not, and I want to say this the right way, it's not an easy program to be a part of. And when I say it's not easy, what I mean by that is it's a program that requires a tremendous commitment from you as parents. It's a program that requires you to step up and be leaders in your community, to be a support system for other parents, for other caregivers. It's a program that says, I value my child and I am committed to seeing their future be bright. So to each of you, during this very difficult time where you are probably having to make incredibly hard choices for yourself and your children, please know that you have people all around you, your fellow parents, your fellow grandparents, the caregivers, the teachers, the center directors, and folks all the way up to the people on this call who care about you and who are with you in this journey. And keep up the good work.
To remember the whole message here is celebrate. We're here to celebrate you. Being a parent is amazing and challenging at the same time. Parents, you're cheerleaders, you're coaches, you're academic tutors, and you provide a safe and non-judgmental haven where children can feel free to make mistakes. Remember, parents, you are important. You are an important component in your child's development. So never underestimate your effectiveness. Most of all, keep dreaming, hoping, smiling, and lastly, never ever give up. Always believe in yourself and your children. Thank you.